Yeah, yeah. But if it's too good, then don't waste it on me. That's also the issue.
You're too polite, Oscar. You're too polite.
I'm English. We're not really polite. We just use it as a weapon.
Here, let's here, make your own gin and tonic, however you like to make it.
Do you have any lime, by the way?
I do not.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Fail.
What is this amateur production we're running here?
Yeah, man. A gin tonic without lime. All right.
I guess.
Is it a new bottle?
It's a new one. I got it specifically for you. I didn't have gin. I don't really drink gin.
Oh no! You see, now
Yeah,
my
feel
English,
bad about it.
My,
Feel
now
bad
my
about
politeness
it.
is actually
Feel bad
yeah.
about it.
Oh.
Feel bad about it. No, wait, hold on. Let's do the whiskey first.
Okay. Oh, that's a lot. No more than that.
That's okay.
No, because I won't finish it.
That's
A
okay.
shot? Like a shot? That's about a shot glass worth.
Yeah, that's about a shot.
And you would drink that as a shot with the ice in it. How's it not?
We're gonna do it without ice.
Already, I'm a
Ooh,
little
shit.
bit.
That's a little too much.
What is this, rum?
No, this is whiskey. We're gonna do
We're
a
doing a
whiskey
shot together
first.
first.
Okay.
Because Oscar, you say you hate whiskey. Is that what it is? That...
Are we already recording?
Yeah, we are.
Oh, we're rolling.
Yeah.
We are hot.
Wait, what did I say until now? I have never been able to drink whiskey. I've tried. It's one of those things where I know I should like it, and everyone's a connoisseur with whiskey, and I feel like the biggest pussy for not being able to drink it. So I keep on trying to train myself, and each time I end up failing. So let's see if it works.
Well, what is
this
it
time.
about it that
I can't tell you why, because I quite like strong tastes, and this
Zhong
is
Kou Wei?
yeah. I like strong Koei.
He's like
Strong Koei.
The Zhong Kou Wei can go a lot of ways.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's see what
Let's
happens.
cheers.
Okay.
Cheers.
All
man.
right,
Cheers to a shot of
cheers.
whiskey.
Cheers. I mean, it's not bad.
It's not bad, right? There it is.
Oh,
There it is.
dude.
Like the bong hit.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, my mouth is on
All right.
fire, guys.
That
Feels
wasn't
good, though,
bad,
doesn't
though.
it?
That actually wasn't bad.
Yeah, it's
It
nice.
had kind of a honey finish.
Yeah.
I liked.
It's nice.
Yeah.
How would that rank for you guys? You're the connoisseurs here.
Well, actually, we're really not that knowledgeable.
We're just
about
the
whiskey.
consumers.
Yeah, we're just consumers.
Beautiful. I feel slightly victimized, but thank you very much.
Here, make your drink. You're gonna do a gin and tonic.
Thank you. I will.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna do some rum today.
I always like it when we go back to the roots of honest drink. I think there
What's
was
the
a pe-
roots?
The roots were in the very beginning. We had a little bit of a ritual with
With the drink, you
with the
mean?
drink,
Yeah, yeah.
bringing it out, what we're gonna drink, kind of tasting a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't think we have many of these left, right? Real rituals. I'm just trying to think if I have any rituals apart from routine masturbation. Does that count? I've spilt my drink. Do you have a serviette? Is that an English thing to say, by the way, a serviette? Or do you know what that means?
Dude, this is going to be like the most loud show
That's
ever.
Eric taking out his anger right now. Hold on, let me get some napkin.
We're off to a great start. We're talking about masturbation.
Yeah. I think it was the whiskey. I was loosened up too quickly, and that also sounds rude.
Can I
these
do like a
things-
disclaimer at the beginning of
This
every
guy.
show?
This guy. Can you believe him?
Hold on.
I do believe anything that I hear from Eric, I'm going to take it at face value.
Oh, that will be your demise.
He's still breaking
He's still
ice?
breaking his ice. Like, we're all ready to drink, Eric.
This has actually been 5 minutes.
For 2 cubes.
Oh, we're drinking the rum now? Okay.
All right. Well, cheers once
Okay,
again.
what happened
Cheers.
to-
The formal beginning.
What happened here?
Oh,
Oh,
God.
You guys are amateurs. I don't know what the hell you
We
think
really
you're doing
are.
here.
We
I know.
really are.
We've turned
Look.
on amateur hour right now.
Wait, hold on. We've made it a professional endeavor to be amateur.
Absolutely. I'll
All right.
cheers to that.
That's
Cheers.
true.
Cheers. Okay.
Cheers.
Cheers. It's good
good.
stuff. Good
Good.
stuff.
I'm happy.
Well, Oscar, first of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm absolutely honored to be here.
I'm so excited that you're here. You do amazing work with Mosaic of China.
Well, thank you. I can't take compliments, but I will just grin through what you just said.
Yeah, just take it.
No, but it's true because it's a different vibe for me whenever I can get another podcaster onto the show. We kind of started off at the same time, right? Is that like
Right.
last time we spoke, we kind of realized our podcast we started around the same time, around
Right.
2
Like
years
around,
ago.
yes, around summer 2019, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really great to have you here to share this journey with you and
Totally.
get your take on it as well, because we're kind of from the same tribe as podcasters, and I really appreciate that.
Oh, I feel it, man. I am so excited. And maybe I speak for your listeners too, because just being here and sort of in the exalted room where you do your podcast, it's like being in the room with friends that I've known for a long time, which I think is the way that you've been able to produce your podcast, which I'm supremely jealous of.
The first time I met you, right? And I feel like there was this like mutual respect. Like podcast in Shanghai, like the bar was Mosaic of China.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, like, because that's the one I knew, I heard of first.
Oh, okay.
And so I had the impression that you were around for a really long time. So to me, it was like Mosaic of China was kind of like that bar set here locally in terms of podcasting.
Well, that's very kind. I think it's a function of me knowing how to make myself look bigger than I actually am. I think when I was actually in business, that was part of what we did as well. Like, you are a small minnow, but you learn the tricks of how to make yourself look like the big shark.
You swim like a big shark.
You swim like a big shark. And that's part of my delusion, in fact.
Well, is it kind of like the same philosophy, like fake it until you make it kind
It
of
is
thing?
sort of, but then you can't fake it to the extent that, there's nothing underneath. You're just some souffle. Like, there has to be some substance. So you can't sort of say something which you're not, but you can project an image that's larger than your actual size. That's what I'm getting for. So it's not about saying something which, puffing yourself up. It's about doing your best to make your image go as far as possible. But again, I don't think I do a good job of that. I think you guys are killing it. Like, I think you have a lot more support than I have. And you are under the radar for me because I spend most of my time in my cave just doing my project. And then when I found out about you guys, I'm like, okay, what the hell is this about? Let me listen to a few of these things. And I got into it despite myself. I really got into your podcast. And I am not supposed to like your podcast. I think you and I talked about this when we met. Like, on the surface, I do not like the idea of your podcast. It's like an hour and a half long. It's just too fucking long. There's 3 straight dudes talking about shit in a room, drinking bloody whiskey, I can't drink whiskey either. I'm like, ugh, I don't know why these guys are popular, but I'll dip into a few episodes. And I was hooked. So I know exactly the feeling of your listeners because, for me, just feeling the energy of your conversations, I felt the realness there. And that was what I think I was jealous of, because I think a lot about my podcast, it's of course real, but it's a lot more measured. It's a lot more controlled. Right. There is a very specific format, which I like. I like having a format to play with. And then you having this freestyle, like no holds barred chat, it works. And it's the heart of what podcasting should be about. So when I listen to you, I feel like, that's what I miss in my podcast. It's that energy that you bring every single time. And I'm not talking about myself. I'm actually talking with the listener in mind. I'm sure people are there nodding. And like, I wish I was in that room talking with the guys too. Because I feel like in every conversation you've had, I would have liked to have been in that room saying, oh, yeah. And my point is this, my point is that. So, yeah, I'm not sure what I do. It lends itself to the same kind of informal way that people outside can be part of the actual experience.
But like, what the most surprising thing after having met you was that you are such a bright personality, right? Like, you are so dynamic. There's so much to you that I honestly, like, I'm going to tell you straight to your face, I feel like it doesn't come out in your podcast, right? And you give too much ground, I feel, to your guests. Well, because they're interesting people, number one. But I feel like there's so much you can add just knowing you, meeting you in person and seeing like this personality. I feel like there's so much charisma you can still add to your show that probably your listeners don't know unless they've met you. Right.
I mean, again, I can't agree with that because I don't know how to take that compliment. But yeah, I mean, it's what I've been struggling with. And this is why I'm keen to talk to you today, actually, because I'm at the process now where I'm in the middle of 2 seasons. So I'm producing my next season now. And I have this space to rethink, well, how do I approach the next season? In what way do I carry on? In what way do I slightly change things? So yeah, this conversation's happening at the right time. To what extent should I inject more from myself? And then, yeah, as you say, don't let the guest control too much. But the alternate thing is, to me, it's an exercise in humility in some way, because I do have quite a healthy ego. And that's not something I particularly like putting out there, which is why I like you guys, because you put all your warts and all into your podcast. Like, I know some of the worst things about you because of your podcast.
Oh shit.
But that's the beauty of it.
Awesome.
That's the vulnerability that I don't think I quite have the balls to put out at the moment. Everything I do is authentic. But, we're all in some ways performative, right? You have a work persona, you have a persona which you use in friends. Like, we all know how to act differently in different situations. And so, for me, I did think very carefully about what is the side of me that I will put out and what I wouldn't. So that's what I think I need to recalibrate, and finding your podcast, getting into it, being reminded about what podcasting is all about, meeting you guys, all of that is part of the same process. We can learn from each other, it's not about competing like my podcast versus your podcast. I love your podcast and I'm proud of mine. It's not a kind of zero-sum game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a very you were talking about your first reaction when you first came across before you started listening to us. And to be honest, it was a similar reaction on my end. In terms of like, there is that natural competitiveness, I guess, especially when we're in a space and in a place where it's very niche, right? And so every other podcast that comes out, there's a little bit of competitiveness, like all of a sudden, like,
Who's this guy?
who's this guy? Who's this new kid on the block, right?
Yeah.
But then like after having met you, I'm so grateful for having met you and that we can share this and we can work together. And we can even help each other. Like I honestly don't see you as a competition right now. I see you as a resource and a help.
Awesome.
Me too. And inspiration in many ways.
Absolutely. Yeah, you've already heard. I'm not faking that myself. And yeah, I've met other podcasters where I thought I'd have the same conversation. We meet for a drink, and then the other side just shuts down, becomes hostile. And I'm like, what the hell's the point of that? Like, I just don't understand that. And it's not like I'm not competitive either. Like I said.
Like they don't want to share trade secrets.
They don't want to share anything. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, which studio do you use? I'm not telling you.
Wow.
Like, okay.
I feel like we were sharing everything the first time we met.
Totally. We had a couple of cocktails too. Yeah. But no, that's the spirit in which I reached out to you. Like, I had heard about your podcast. I reached out to all three of you separately. And I've got to say, that's where your characters all came out, and I'm looking at you, Eric, because now it's time to talk about Eric.
Because you're meeting Eric. Okay, because let's bring some context. Yeah. When we first met, it was just me and Howie. This is your first time actually meeting Eric.
It is, and it's a pleasure. And we've just had a brief introduction for 10 minutes. You're being remarkably quiet. I appreciate that. But at the same time, out of the three of you, you were the most guarded when I reached out to you. So with you, Justin, I think it was Howie first I reached out to. I said, hey, Howie, I heard your podcast. I'm also a podcaster. We should meet up. We're doing the same thing. Great to know what you're doing. Justin is a bit later, but similar story. And then Eric, I reached out to you, and you were funny because your reply, I wish I remembered it, but it was, it was like, oh, hi. Oh, you like the podcast? What's your 3 favorite podcasts from The Honest Drink?
That's so him.
I was like, oh, okay. No, I appreciated it because I could have just been blowing smoke up your ass and like, oh, what does this guy want, And you're like, okay, you said that you like it, prove it. I want the 3. And I was like, okay. You are definitely yourself in the podcast because that's the side that I relate to most.
He was saying that he relates to you the most.
Oh, yeah, you guys are kindred spirits.
I relate to you the most.
No, a couple of funny things. Now, I could talk all day as well. And we've developed a certain chemistry, and we're also trying to calibrate as well. I think we have a great thing. Like, we definitely really enjoy doing this, and we've had our ups and downs, and it's been a wild ride, for a couple of years. And our feelings about the show, about each other, have evolved over time as well. Really ups and downs. 180 degrees. Like the first batch of episodes, it was a lot of just like we didn't really know what we were getting into, and we're trying to find our footing. Recently, as we start that same thought process, right, because we're in about the same part of our journey, it's like, okay, well, what do we like about this? What do other people like about this? Where do we get our energy? And spending so much time together, doing something together, inevitably there's going to be much more friction. Jeff, we just had a kind of an episode with him, and Jeff, quoted his, I think, grandmother, and said, like, you can't really get anything done without friction. Friction creates sort of, everything, right?
Absolutely.
And so we've started going through different periods of friction. I actually could start the show and be quite gregarious and stuff like that, but I think we have a good format where, Justin sort of facilitates in the beginning, right? And different ideas come out, and then we kind of take his lead on certain things. And so that's what you see, right? Is that we're trying to let that side play out. You won't see Howie and I start the episode a lot and start firing away questions.
I would love for you guys to do that, though.
Right. But the thing is, like,
I just want to make it. It's not like Justin's iron fist where it's like my law.
Totally. You've been keeping us down, and
Justin has Eric in a headlock right now.
exactly. Come on, can you be a little bit like, he turns off my microphone half the time. It's brutal.
But I think it goes back again to authenticity. That's what we're all trying to do. And there's so much information. Half of it is just bullshit. And so all you can do to try and fight that is to put out stuff that is real. That's the only way you can fight against it. I mean, you just use that as one example, but I think it speaks to the greater purpose. But then maybe I should ask you, like, okay, you're doing this recalibration. So why are you doing this podcast? Have you figured that out?
Yeah. Once people know you have a podcast, right? And once you start doing a podcast, inevitably conversations with people in your community will come up about the podcast, because people will be like, "Oh, you have a podcast. What's it about?"
Wait, let me interrupt you right there. And are you at the point now where you can say, "I'm a podcaster" or "I have a podcast" without feeling like you're a complete wanker?
Yeah, we have big egos.
But I mean, to meet somebody at a party and they say, "Oh, I've got a podcast," like immediately I would like run away. Like, "Oh, you're that person." There's always there's one wanker in every party, and I am that wanker now.
Well, no, I appreciate your view on that. And I suppose this goes back to some of your earlier very complimentary thoughts, is that the show is a metaphor for life. The show is a journey. The show is a way that we're going to improve as human beings.
Please don't improve. I like your weaknesses.
No,
I think
there's so many of them.
I think that's what the thing is about the show, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of podcasts I listen to, not every single one, but the vast majority of the podcasts I listen to, they are trying very hard to incorporate a certain level of professionalism and intellectualness, I guess.
Absolutely well said.
And to me, like, I feel like, number one, like going back to what you guys are talking about, like with ego, there's definitely, you have to have a minimum base level of ego to even think to start a podcast in the first place, right?
Yeah.
To think that people are going to
wanna
want to
hear your
listen
voice.
to what you have to say,
Yeah.
there's already inherently a base level of ego at play there. So that's a given. But I just feel like for us, like, it's therapeutic in the sense that, like, honesty is a very tough, it's tough and it's scary. To be honest, we don't always achieve that. We're not always successful with that, even on our show. But I think for me, the driving force behind, at least I'll speak for myself, behind doing this podcast is the constant attempt to achieve that honesty.
Mm-hmm.
Whether we fail or succeed, hey, but at least we're attempting, and we're genuinely attempting to do that, no matter what kind of conversation we're having. And that, to me, is always, combined with a genuine curiosity, is always, to me, kind of like my North Star whenever I'm thinking, like, oh, what is this show about for me?
I'm here for the alcohol. So I'm just here to drink. I don't know. But I mean, one thing that I've always kept harping on, and I always still bring up, our backgrounds of being American, but also Chinese, and the complexity of having both sides.
Yeah.
So that to me is always the crux of whenever we have conversations. I'm always constantly trying to think from that perspective. What makes us different from everybody else? I mean, you want to talk about complexity of life. I mean, I'm sure there are thousands of podcasts out there that talk about the complexity of life. You want to talk about curiosity and stuff like that. There are thousands of podcasts that talk about curiosity, but I can't name many podcasts that come from our perspective,
Totally.
combining all that.
Yeah,
So I think
that's it. That's it in a nutshell. I think it combines the content and you guys' identity, because that's the two circles of the Venn diagram which you inhabit. And I'm also conscious of that because I'm a white dude in Asia, and I've got a podcast called Mosaic of China. So I've got to be very careful with the identity side when I do my podcast. Like try and keep my guests to a minimal when it comes to other white guys, because it's not a good look to have two white guys talking about China.
Yeah.
And that's another thing where actually you have an inbuilt advantage just with your identities, where you can talk to anyone. You can have a whole parade of white guys in and you still are diverse because of you three. Whereas I'm always conscious of that. So
Interesting.
I think, totally. It's part of my project is to have as diverse a slate of guests as possible.
So do you have like a white guy quota in terms of like?
It's like the China film quota.
I basically do. I have a diversity audit, I call it. And so because I can look at the whole season, so I do seasons of 30 episodes, and it's on purpose so that I can look at that season and I can say, okay, how many Chinese people do I have? I try and get usually 10 out of 30 to be mainland Chinese. And then out of the remaining 20, how do I split that in terms of nationality? Then I take a look at it again and I go, okay, that's just the identity side. What about what it is that they do? So I look, okay, how many do I have from the world of business? How many from arts? How many from science? How many from academia? And I make sure that that diversity is pretty well looked after. And then male, female, I have 50% male, 50% female. That's something which I will not negotiate on. So you will look, if you look at my podcasts, it's literally boy, girl, boy, girl, boy, girl. And then it comes down to LGBT as well. I have LGBT representation. You wouldn't know it to listen to it, but 1 in 5 of my guests are LGBT or queer in some way. We don't talk about it. It's not an issue, but
It's not the focus, right?
It's not the focus, but it's an underlying ethos in terms of what I'm doing. Just to kind of riff off what you just said about your podcast, it's about celebrating the diversity of the human experience, as well as the fact that there is a universality. It's not about actually saying, oh, you're different. It's about saying you're different and we're all the same. I can enjoy the differences and I can poke at the differences, and that's interesting, but ultimately the human experience is exactly the same, and it doesn't have to be Mosaic of China. It could be Mosaic of Mozambique, and it would be the exact same experience. Yeah.
I love that.
So your turn to answer the question, Oscar.
You see, guys, I managed to actually interview you guys on your show.
You flipped the tables for a moment.
It's all a deflection tactic because I don't have the answer either.
Yeah.
My situation is slightly different to yours. I started my podcast after I'd sold my company. So I had a headhunting company for 10 or 11 years. I managed to sell my entire share without being needed to stay with the company like beyond the sale, which was quite rare to actually be able to walk away. And it happened at a time that I wasn't expecting it. And I never really had a plan B. Like, okay, I've sold my company now. If I was a true entrepreneur, I would have set up another company. But I realized, no, I don't want to do that. In fact, I'm quite allergic to the entire endeavor. I imagined people, looking, okay, what's he going to do next, Whether that was true or not, I don't know.
Like expectation?
The men's.
Yes, exactly.
Ooh, the
I
mianzi.
was like, should I shimienza it here? Because I could have done a big loss of faith after having. What do I want to do? So there was a bit of what do I want to do that makes me happy, but what also can I do that keeps me relevant? That was the ego side, and it's not just the ego. It's also what I enjoy, which is to be in the traffic of ideas. I think that's what I liked about being a headhunter, and I specifically headhunted heads of HR. So that always meant that I could meet somebody from the tech sector one meeting. It could be pharmaceuticals the next meeting. It could be, it could be artistic the next one. So I was always kept curious during my 10, 11 years as a headhunter, and I wanted to somehow have something that could emulate that without the trappings of headhunting, which I did not like. And there was quite a few at the stage where, I was just burnt out. When I was at the end of my career, I actually had an ambassadorial role in my company where I didn't do much, but I got a lot of money by doing very little. I just was the face of the company in China. And now I'm working all the time on this podcast project and not getting any money at all, but never felt happier.
Exactly. I was going to say that, yeah.
It feels like it's what I should have always been doing. Now, like you guys, I don't know if what I'm doing is the best that I could be doing. I don't know how it's going to iterate in the future either. But it's a long way of answering that question, I don't quite know now why I'm doing it. because it's evolved to the extent that now it's slightly become a thing in its own right. And I don't want it to become something which I don't have control of, something where it's a monster which then I have to just keep on feeding somehow. And I know you guys go through this, right? I get you, oh shit, I've got another episode coming up. We've got no guests, we've got nothing planned. Like, what the hell do we do? And suddenly it's like, wait, this is supposed to be fun. Like, why am I putting pressure on myself? So I'm in that stage right this very moment when you're interviewing me. This is probably why it's on my mind, because I've got a lot going on right now, which has started to stress me out. And so now I'm thinking, what the hell am I doing? Why am I stressing myself out? I got it into my head that I will do a big tour of China and interview all the people who are coming up in the next season who are outside of Shanghai. I want to interview them all in person.
On the road?
On the road. And I want to do that all face to face.
Cool.
That gives me a different perspective of China. It's not meant to be Mosaic of Shanghai.
Yeah.
And then here's where it gets really wonky, because if you have two good ideas, sometimes they can clash and it becomes one big stupid motherfucking idea. And that's kind of what's happened now, because I had another idea. So in my podcast, I have a second part of every interview where I ask everyone the same 10 questions. So there's a freestyle part at the beginning, and then there's a formulaic part in the second half.
Yeah, like the rapid round.
It's the rapid round. And I love it because you get a very different style in those two parts. And then you can compare how 30 different people in the season answer the same question from their different backgrounds, different perspectives. And that's great to compare. I had the idea that, oh, you know what? I could try and get sponsors for those 10 questions. So I don't like the idea of sponsorship, but I could have the question on what's your favorite destination in China. I could have a travel agent sponsor that question and say, question 2, brought to you by blah, 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 is... And so that was a great idea. But now I've got 3 days before I start the bloody interviews. And so I was writing a proposal about sponsorship, which I've never done, and reaching out to people saying, hey, what about this for an idea, with no proven track record, and stressing myself out like an idiot. But now when I go to my first interview, what do I say? Do I actually have to ask 2 different versions of the questions? One, if I get this sponsor, one, if I don't have a sponsor. What the hell am I going to do? And I haven't worked it out. And I'm just sat there going, this is a weekend and I'm stressed out sending proposals out. Why am I doing that? And part of that is the vestigial business side of me, which I can't help but create something out of this project. And I'm thinking, why am I doing that? That's not why I started. And yet I need it almost as a kind of proof of concept, that if I can get more buy-in, then it proves the concept more to me. And I'm thinking, is that why I'm doing it?
Does that go back to your ego? Is that the ego speaking?
I think it is. But it's also, I'll tell you what it also is. It is because I'm proud of the content and I need to find creative ways that people will amplify my content.
Yes.
And that still is, I hope, what drives me. You know, when I lie in bed and question myself, like, why am I doing it? I hope it's that latter explanation and not so much the ego side.
Yeah.
So part of my psyche is to overcomplicate things.
It sounds like, don't take this the wrong way, it sounds like it's really tough being you in the sense that, like, there's this duality to you and they're conflicting and they're constantly bumping up against each other, because everything that you're saying that brings you stress and pressure now was all brought on by yourself, seeking them out, you know?
Totally.
So it's this constant, like, tug of war.
Oh, you are watching a midlife crisis before your eyes.
I was gonna bring that up. I was gonna wonder.
I'm a walking midlife. I mean, okay, let me tell you what this is, because when I talked to you before about when you meet somebody at a party, are you confident to say I'm a podcaster without feeling that you are a wanker, right? Imagine if when you meet somebody at a party and the answer is, I'm retired. Like, that's the stuff that I'm dealing with, because that actually is my status. I've sold my company and I'm basically not going to work again. I'm retired. And when you meet somebody at a party and they say they're retired, I mean, why are you here? You might as well just be dead. What relevance do you have, you know? So I think the side that is fighting that, you know, people say, oh, you're retired, great, you can just do what you want and you can go into obscurity. Go into absolute irrelevant obscurity is, to me, a scary chasm to look into. And I think that is the conflict. The conflict is, no, I am retired. I have this amazing luxury of doing what I want. And at the same time, the conflict is, I want to remain relevant.
I still have value to society.
It's the value to society. Yeah, it's really hard. It is like, what the hell is it all about? Why are we doing anything? When you are not defined by what you do, then actually who are you? These are the big questions that you don't answer. You don't have time to ask yourself while you're busy working. None of you have really done that, I'm sure. You are what you're doing, and your podcasts are on top. You have multiple identities.
I can guarantee, like, the average person would come up to you like that. That's like a worker, right? Will come to you, be like, "Oh my God, I'm so jealous of you. You're retired. I mean, you have no worries, right?"
Yeah, I mean, and I have to accept that. I mean, of course, I've created all the bullshit myself. Ultimately, intrinsically, you're absolutely right, and I have to keep on saying that. But I'm a total idiot, and I won't take that as the gift that it is. I will overcomplicate things in a way that this is exactly why I relate to Eric. Because Eric is, out of the three of you, the least sort of happy-go-lucky. You're the person who overthinks, overquestions, and that's why I really feel for you. Because I'm sure if you were in my position, you'd be just as gnarled up as I am.
I feel like we should definitely bring that up because Eric was not there when we were together, like talking, and he did say that, like he felt that this relationship with Eric, and then would you bring up? You brought up your Excel. And you're like, I wish I could show Eric the Excel that I made.
I should have bought it.
Eric can pull out many Excels right now.
I would love to compete with you with the number of worksheets I have for the podcast, the workflows, and they're all color-coded. Oh my God, they're beautiful.
Eric's getting competitive now. He's like thinking, you don't have more than me, Oscar. You don't have more than me.
Maybe not.
What I was thinking in my head was first of all, I was listening very carefully to what you were saying. And second of all, you had some really great nuggets in there, right? And I wrote some of these things down because the way to hear someone else articulate something that you might be feeling is a learning experience. And you're articulating in a way where, I'm always struggling to find the right words just because that's how I am, right? I want to find the right words so that I can voice out what I'm thinking. I was having a lunch conversation today and with two friends and who are like leadership coaches, and we were talking about sort of introvert and extrovert, and they're kind of very trained up on this stuff. And one way to look at it is that extroverts just need to talk things out. So you ask them a question like, "How are you feeling?" or "What'd you do today?" and then you get like a 10-minute response. And introverts are kind of like, you ask them a question, it's almost like you have to ask them like 3 times, and they're like, "Why aren't you saying anything?" And they're like, "Because I'm thinking." So my brain is on, my brain is outside of my skull sometimes, and I'm kind of talking through these things. So listening to you, brings both internal reflection, but then also like I'm external to you. So I'm kind of like, well, what advice would I give or what questions would I ask, right? And so a few things that I noticed is that number one is like your inner voice is really loud, okay? Just like mine is, just like all of us, but like your inner voice is really, really loud. It's telling you all of these things, and sometimes it's telling you some great things like, "Oh, like Oscar, you're great." And then sometimes your inner voice is telling you you're not good enough. You're not doing enough. What you're doing is not enough. And this whole notion of being relevant, it's almost like your inner voice is reflecting your own insecurities. Like that other person actually doesn't give a shit, potentially, right? But you're like, "Oh, I'm not relevant to myself almost." It's not that other person, right? At what point did achieving things and being relevant, when did that start mattering to you? Because I could pinpoint when it started mattering to me. I mean, like it was like 5 years old, or 6 years old. So at what point did it matter to you?
The status of being a successful business owner was quite important for the reasons that Justin, you pointed out right at the beginning of our conversation, which is I am a silly, flamboyant, funny, ridiculous person.
I didn't say all those things.
Well, basically, that's the way I'm projecting my own views.
That's the way you took it.
I'm basically...
You're a clown.
I'm a jokester. I'm a jokester. When you meet me, I am the person who will not take anything seriously. And so I enjoyed the juxtaposition of being that person and then somebody later on saying, oh, but he owns his own business and it's successful. And like, I quite enjoyed that status part because it offset my ridiculousness. So without that status, that's where I feel that it's coming from. I need to have some serious side to offset the silliness. And I think that's also where, I like to delve into thoughtful topics on the podcast without being too ridiculous. Also to offset when you meet me, I'm not going to say one thing that's serious. I realized that when I went into business that I needed to have something to offset the silliness, which I just can't help projecting.
Why do you feel like you need that validation? Was there some point where you were being silly where it wasn't appropriate for the moment?
Oh,
'Cause
totally.
why can't you just be silly?
Because it's never. I think I'm good at subverting the expectation. So I quite like being silly in a business context where the expectation is that you're going to do a serious talk here. Like you're a presenter at this conference and you're going to make a joke about poo. But that's everyone laughs because it's subverting expectations.
Were you the class clown?
I wasn't the class clown. No. Not at all. But
you didn't want to conform. Like you're not for conformity.
I'm quite a conformist, yeah.
Are you?
I'm actually.
What a paradox.
It's a total paradox.
Yeah.
I'm a conformist trapped in a non-conformist body.
It's like Jekyll and Hyde with you. Like
Yeah.
there's like
Green
two
Day,
completely
man.
Actually,
opposite.
Green Day.
this
Walking
is-
contradiction.
But that's why this project, it speaks to what I am and what I do. I can control the way that I've done the podcast in a way that it really is a manifestation. That's the word that you use. It's a manifestation of my fucked up character in the way that there is a lot of complexity and a lot of control behind it. Absolutely.
Yeah, we were quite impressed when you were explaining how you organize your shows and each season, based off of all the different tabs and just like you said, like making sure that you have this male-female ratio that's going back and forth, making sure that out of every 5 guests, somebody is in the LGBT community or et cetera, et cetera. I mean, that just shows that it's actually the mosaic of Oscar. It's not the mosaic
Yeah.
of China.
No,
It's the mosaic of Oscar.
Oh.
Oscar's got a lot going on here.
It's very specifically curated, yes.
Yeah.
And that if there's any political aspect to what I'm doing, it is that. It's like I'm quite passionate about showing people that diversity is a good thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?